Welcome into the Action Network podcast presented by the FanDuel Sportsbook. I'm your host today, Brendan Glasheen. Folks, the time is nearing. It is very near. NFL football will be on our calendars as of August 3rd. Yeah, preseason football, baby. Hall of Fame game between the Jets and the Browns underway in Canton on Thursday, August 3rd. So that begs the question, how do you bet on the NFL preseason? I don't have many answers, so we bring in a couple of guests today. Our Director of Predictive Analytics at Action Network, Sean Kerner. You may have seen his work, of course, at actionnetwork.com in the app. Also the co-author of the NFL Luck Rankings. And we also have professional NFL bettor Simon Hunter. You can hear him on the Favorites podcast with Chad Millman. He is the co-host of that show. So as I said, fellas, preseason football, Jets-Browns, they get things going on Thursday, August 3rd. You know, the NFL preseason has that reputation where, degenerates enjoy this. It gives you that itch to get set for week one. Maybe you're a college football bettor too. You just need something to sink your teeth into before the real games begin. But there can be some edges, from what I understand, some significant edges on betting preseason football. Sean Kerner, I'll go to you first. Yeah. What's your general outlook of preseason football and how you dive into it?
Yeah, so I guess, you could call it degenerate in the sense that neither team is necessarily trying to win the game. So it's interesting, betting on a game in that context. But I think if you're paying attention closely, like I am, I'm projecting every player for every game for daily fantasy projections, for player props. So I have a good sense on like which players will be on the field when you have that level of information, you can have a big edge. And there's a bunch of different ways to use that information, whether it's betting on like just the first quarter, just the first half, or waiting in game to find a spot. I think there's a lot of situations and scenarios where you can find some massive edges in preseason.
Simon, your takeaways on when you see the line come out. We'll get into Jets Browns before we conclude the program, just to use it as an example. But when you look at preseason football, what comes to mind?
Yeah, it all depends. It's evolved a lot over the years. I would say before it was nationally legalized, it was definitely hard to get money down on the preseason. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget that first year that New Jersey legalized and they were taking bets on the preseason. It was probably one of the most fun I've ever had, right? Because the books didn't limit people. They were happy to take money because they were just excited for people to come and bet football, bet a large amount of money. And there was 4 preseason games. So it was honestly, I didn't even realize it was kind of the golden age of preseason football because now it's tight. The books know that, especially if you have a model, you can get a big advantage on these books in preseason. So it's tough, man. It's tough to get money down now. You really have to work at it. Where regular season, it might be a little tough Sunday night, Monday morning, and Tuesday to get money down. But come Wednesday, Thursday, the books they'll take your money. But preseason, it's different. They're more smart to it. Of yes, the average layman fan, maybe they're betting $5 on the preseason game, but the professionals are betting big money because they're seeing big advantages in the sense of we talk all the time. It's about how good your sources are, but it's also about knowing these different coaches. Like I talk all the time, Andy Reid, this old guard coach, he played Mahomes in 2 of the 3 preseason games last year. And he might have played him in the third one. I forget if he actually did play in that third one, but he had him playing a lot of time in the preseason. And his reasoning was sound. He said, Tyreek Hill is gone. I need him to get comfortable with these new wide receivers. So those are little things they're looking for. Those little details of just because it's a veteran coach and a veteran quarterback doesn't mean they're going to Sean McVay, right? Sean McVay does not care about the preseason. He will not play Stafford at all. He won't play many starters. Those are things over the years you kind of learn the rhythm of these different coaches. I really take away from it. So to me, people that say, oh, it's just degenerates that bet it, it's not true at all. It's really professionals that really bet it. And the general public, it's like a warm-up, right? It's like them getting back into football mode. So to me, what I always tell people is if you're just betting casually, right, you're not putting in work, you're not really studying, now listen to these kind of smart podcasts we're doing here at Action Network. Go small, right? If you're a big bet during the season, it's $10, maybe bet $1 on these different games or your crazy parlays. But I try to tell people if you're not really putting the effort in, don't go overboard because to me, preseason is where you should be putting a lot of work in to get good information. You can't just make your lazy bets on it. So that would definitely be my biggest advice to people is just don't be betting big money because you're itching for football and a bet on football. try to go in with the game plan. That's really important here betting preseason football.
Yeah, a lot of those lessons can carry over too into the regular season. I would imagine as it pertains to studying and sources, as you said, digesting the correct information matters. And the key word there is correct, because is a lot of information just smoke? Is it just how much do you buy into what a coach says? How much do you buy into a quarterback competition or that wide receiver 6 or 7 trying to make a roster? There's so many levels to it. So, Kerner, when you're going about preparing, I don't want to give away too much to what the model is, but when you're processing information, what are some do's and don'ts?
Yeah, you always have to take everything with a grain of salt. And just over the years, I've understood the coach speak when it comes to preseason. So, I mean, really what it comes down to when I'm modeling for game projections is knowing which quarterback's going to be in the game when, because they're usually attached to that entire unit. So when, Simon mentioned Patrick Mahomes is playing last year, he's on the field with the first team offense. And then when he comes out and Blaine Gabbert comes in this year, he's attached to the second team offense. So you have situations where you have a team really wanting to get the first unit, like a full quarter of work, where the other team, they just have the second unit and they're barely trying. And those spots is when I like to attack. And you have to be, certain that it's going to happen. And again, it's taken years to kind of understand that. But what I do is I actually put together this information and package it up in like QB estimated playing time for other people to digest. So I think that's one of the best ways to kind of understand the flow of the game and maybe look for in-game betting opportunities. But that's really, when it comes to preseason betting, that's all I'm doing is just trying to digest as much information as possible and update my projections and everything as that comes in.
Simon, how about, and Carter mentions quarterbacks. We'll have situations more so, to me at least, you look at like the AFC South, where you're going to have an Anthony Richardson, a CJ Stroud get their first real crack at it. And some other scenarios like Tampa jumps out when you got Baker Mayfield and a second round pick in Kyle Trask. Is there legitimate competition? Mac Jones, Bailey Zappi, just another example where that a Zappi or a Trask might end up getting significant time because they want to see what they have. So when it comes to digesting info, what comes to mind?
Yeah, that stuff's definitely important, right? To me, the quarterback position, I mean, anyone knows this, it's everything, right? In football, that's how a lot of our models are built out around the quarterback position. They affect the line more than any other position. It's not even close. So to me, preseason, that's one of my favorite things about it. I'm learning about these quarterbacks that, yes, they're irrelevant, but there's always that Brock Purdy, right? That's that guy where when Brock Purdy came on the scene, I need to go back to preseason and watch his film and kind of figure out what this kid is. It honestly didn't help me at all when I went back and watched his film, because you really couldn't see how this kid's just clutch. Like when there's a 300-pound lineman in his face, he makes that right read that Shanahan likes him to read. Like, it's just, I love Trey Lance. I think Trey Lance is way better than Brock Purdy, but Brock Purdy is already back from his arm injury. That's a big deal for them this preseason, right? We're going to see either Brock Purdy taking those reps, or if he's not, now the 49ers have Trey Lance, and then if he's not playing, it's Sam Darnold. So to me, that's a big advantage if you're taking the 49ers this year in preseason, where, the Eagles, yes, Jalen Hurts probably not going to play that much. It's Mariota, right? He's going to be the one playing for the Eagles this preseason. That might give you a little more value to taking him, right? A veteran quarterback over, say, a guy who is going to be playing for the Bucs, right? That kid Trask is a second, third-year player. If it's in versus Mariota, you're probably going to give the advantage to Mariota in that matchup. Now, if it's all of Tampa's number one starters, that again will move the line. So that's one of those where quarterback is very important in preseason, but it's also, are the starters playing? Who's resting? I think Sean nailed on the head. You really have to learn what teams are BS and who are telling the truth. Because some coaches, they'll flat out lie to the media right before the kickoff, right? They'll be like, yeah, I'll never forget Zeke Elliott was fully dressed. So was Dak for the Cowboys last year. I did a large wager on the Dallas Cowboys in the first half. They played one series. They got a first down, and then he took them out. So that's one of the things you do need to be wary of. These coaches, they might want to just see one little thing. If they see it, they're happy taking their guys out. So that's why I always tell people, be careful betting a lot, because it's so much misinformation. That to me is what's important here, is you're kind of getting a basis here for the quarterback position. That's really what you want to be focusing on in preseason, are the quarterbacks, not so much trying to make a ton of money.
Well, but you, just to follow up though, you brought up a good point about Mahomes and Andy Reid. Now that just might be an Andy Reid thing, where Patrick Mahomes, and we found out in that quarterback documentary on Netflix that dude wants to play. in any
yeah.
shape or form, whether it's a preseason game, a walkthrough, whatever it may be. He wants to be out there. We didn't see as many key weapon guys like Adams last year. Tyreek Hill was the example you made. There aren't as many of those this year. Now, there have been some quarterback changes, of course, like Rodgers is a big name. A head coaching change in Denver with Sean Payton now coaching Russell Wilson. That was a train wreck last year. But on the subject of pass catchers, like, okay, I'll give you another one. Bryce Young, all new with Sanders and Thielen. They move on from DJ Moore. Are those spots that you're circling as far as like, okay, I might see in a new coach, especially, where they might want to see a little bit more from the first unit?
Yeah, I would definitely say this is the time of year I'm obsessed with the first, second, third year quarterbacks. Like, I will read all I can about Justin Fields. I will read all I can about Trevor Lawrence, Anthony Richardson, the rookie quarterback in the Colts. Every day I'm going over the notes from their practices, listen to beat writers, because it is a big deal, right? You're trying to form an opinion on these guys. And again, I'm high on Anthony Richardson. If I think he's going to be rookie of the year, that's someone I'm going to follow closely to make sure this guy is actually legit. I'm willing to put money on him. Where Bryce Young, we already know what he is, right? Anytime I see a Bryce Young article that he looked really well in practice, it's expected, right? He's the number one pick. It was the same feeling I had with Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence. You just want to check in his progress. So I feel like you nailed it there, where it's like, okay, I got to really be on top of these guys and figuring out who's legit and who's not, just because it's a big deal. Preseason, people might be like, oh, it's not that serious. It is. Guys are playing for their jobs. Old veterans are trying to keep their jobs over young guys. Like, people might take relaxed positions, right? Like Travis Kelce, he's probably not going that hard in preseason. He's a unicorn, right? He knows he's good. Almost every other guy on that roster is trying to make a spot or get a position up. So to me, it is important to watch preseason. I know it sounds boring to people, but man, you really got to study these quarterbacks because it really showcases their talent, especially in preseason.
Kerner, one of the first things you said was coach speak, and the dress rehearsal tagline you might use on a specific game. And I guess the good teams fall into that category, right? Where you know what you have. Simon just kind of hit on that. But with the teams that are a little murky, where you know who the guy's going to be, you think, but you want to see a little bit more. You want to see reps. Another example, I think, is Atlanta when they bring in give Desmond Ridder a real chance with Bijan Robinson in the backfield and what they've done to make changes. Houston with CJ Stroud, they changed their whole receiving core. They added Dalton Schultz from Dallas. Just the coach speak, I could understand would be, you kind of know what's bull crap and what necessarily isn't, but is there some value to what coaches say leading into a game?
Oh, 100%. And, every team's going to be a case-by-case basis. I don't like to make, wide assumptions about people. But one thing I do know is, Simon alluded to it, like Sean McVay doesn't play starters at all. If you're going to be week one starter, he's not going to play you. So the Rams are always playing scrubs, and more teams are kind of going that direction. We don't really see any true dress rehearsal games anymore. Like that used to be week 3 when there was 4 weeks of preseason. Week 3 was the popular week where you could see a stud quarterback play the entire game. You just don't see that anymore. If you do, it's usually week 2 of the new format with 3 weeks. So that's one of those things where we typically know going into the game a pretty good idea of who's going to play when. The key is to react to that news as soon as you get it, because the market does move pretty fast. So if they were to announce, Patrick Mahomes is going to play the entire first half, you can usually get the number. You probably have like seconds before they move it, but you can usually get the number, and then they adjust accordingly. But reacting quickly to that, like more official news where, if Andy Reid does say he's going to play about the half, you could typically believe him. But it's a case-by-case basis.
Simon, what about you as far as, and Kerner laid it out very nicely, we don't really have that 4-week formula anymore. It's now 3 weeks, so you don't really have that game to circle where we'll see mostly first unit guys.
Yeah, I go about preseason pretty weird. I usually bet really small the first week, and then once I have more data on these backups and the offense these teams are running and what coaches are doing, then I'll go a little more heavy on second week. Third week, I'll probably go small again. So it really is only that second week I really take advantage of. If you're just a boring bettor, right, you just want to really play it really simple, everyone knows about the Ravens. The Ravens haven't lost a preseason game, and I think it's 3 years, Sean? 4 years are we going on?
Yeah.
That's one of those where like I'll make a lot of bets and I'll just throw the Ravens in on a parlay or a teaser, whatever you want to do. I really can't fault you for that. I've had a lot of people ask about the Ravens thing. I don't know. There is no model that can explain what happens here with Harbaugh and that team, but they play really hard in the preseason. And even when they're in games they're losing, Harbaugh goes all out in the fourth quarter and they usually come back and win those games. So I don't know what to tell people about the Ravens. I get a lot of questions about it. We've never seen anything like it. You can go through all the history. The bookmakers too, they tried to juice it up last year. They went 2-1 ATS last year. So the books can't catch up to them. Pros like me, I bet on them, but I'm scared. It's not like I'm betting big money on it because I'm like, it's eventually going to go the other way. It's only going to keep going this way for so long. But I always try to tell people this. If you're going to bet anything on preseason, please, for the love of God, bet the Ravens money line. It's just one of those things. You have to bet it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. It is a lazy man's bet, but I keep betting the Ravens money line, and it's been nothing but good to me. So to me, looking at these early games, we're about to talk about the Hall of Fame game. Yeah, I'm gonna have a bet on that, right? I have a side on that. I'm not going crazy though about it. That's what I'm trying to explain to people. It's like this isn't regular season. Week 1, it's a totally different ball game. I've been betting on week 1 for now 4 months. Preseason, I just started betting on it maybe 3 days ago. So it's just a very different beast. So to me, my biggest advice is I go small, right? Week 1 and preseason. Week 2, you kind of have a better feel for things. That's why I ramp it up here. So try not to go too crazy, people. I know football is back, but take it easy. It's just week 1 of the preseason.
It's kind of fascinating because they open August 12th against Philadelphia at home. So is Marcus Mariota going to be the solution to knocking the Baltimore Ravens off?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, but of any guy, that's a reputable guy, I would imagine, of many backups.
Yeah, no, that's true. I think he went like 0 for 10 passing today, though. So he's already in mid-season form, Mariota.
Again, without giving too much away. So we got our dress rehearsal spiel out. It's not quite the same, folks. You still, as these guys have highlighted, you got to really pay attention and stay locked in as the week progresses, training camp and into the preseason schedule. Favorite sources for intel. And I realize that could be sort of a mysterious pool of information that cannot be fully disclosed. But Sean, do you go somewhere for Twitter, to beat reporters, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think Twitter, X, whatever we're calling it today, is probably my favorite.
I don't know what to do.
So I have lists. Try to keep it up to date with beat reporters. That's really crucial, especially like leading up to a game. Getting information. Sometimes you get some wacky stuff in preseason that's not even player related. One of my favorite bets and wins in preseason, or just of all time, was I think 2019. It was Packers Raiders. I think the game was in like Canada or something, and there was some big pothole in the end zone, and like, we can't play on this shit. So they were considering like shortening the field. So I just instant bet the over, like, just sign me up. Like, we might get like an 80-yard field. It was like 37.5. That's what happened. They brought the cones out. They made the field 20 yards shorter. They removed kickoffs. I think the line closed like 41.5 or something like that, and there ended up like being like 43 points. So you get weird things like that, or like if they only have one punter, one kicker, he gets hurt in the pregame, they have no kicker. There's other things that you can do. So preseason, you get some wacky stuff, and they just play through it because, again, these games don't matter. But you get some pretty big edges just by scouring Twitter and just being one of the first people to react to the news. So that's why I think Twitter is still the way to go. Or
you have construction companies on standby telling you
yeah,
about
that too. Yes.
The grounds crew is Kerner's go-to. They made the list. Simon, same question for you. Any sort? What sort? So not the information itself, but where the information is coming from. Where are you looking?
And it's just funny how far football has come, because if people remember, if they're old enough to remember, the first Hard Knocks, the Ravens came up to Philadelphia, played the Vet, and they refused to play on the field. That's how shitty the field was at the old Vet, the old Eagle Stadium. So that would not happen anymore. They'd make them play that game. So you can do what me and Sean do, which is I have a ton of beat writers. Some people I really value. If you're trying to do the lazy way, there's like, they're not, I'm going to call them ETFs, but that's what they literally are. It's just all of the beat writers on one feed kind of, and it's just different Twitter accounts that do that. I know Sean follows this guy. It's at 32 beat writers. So he's basically kind of like a bot that just say someone tweets Bryce Young completed a pass. This dude will retweet it. Like it's literally a ton of BS information, but there's a lot of good nuggets in there, and you can just all get it up from this one Twitter source. So at 32 beat writers, I think he's pretty good. Like he posts a lot of the stuff in preseason here that I really find value in. So to me, there's just one handle I'll give out. I'd say follow him for this preseason because any little thing, like literally a guy breathes and it's impressive. He will tweet out this guy breathed air today, and it was pretty incredible. Like Bijan Robinson ran the ball really fast today. People are shocked that this guy can run the ball. He's running back for the Atlanta Falcons. So it is one of those, it's going to be a lot of information, a lot of useless information, but there are some really good gems in there. So to me, that's one of those where I know people hate on Twitter, they hate on social media. These are really, really great tools to use. Like you don't have to go on there and give your opinion, right? If people annoy you, you can literally just make a burner account where you're just following football beat writers. Like I have an account like that where I'm just strictly using it for information. So to me, it's a great tool. And you're Joe Public, like you're getting inside information and you're the public. You can't beat it really. So definitely listen to beat writers on Twitter. They might be blowing a lot of smoke up your butt, right? Because they're working for the team. But overall, the information is very, very, very well done.
It's not like the old days, though, where beat writers would get on the bus and get on the plane. In a lot of cases, they're just doing their own thing. And a lot of times, too, they're going to practices and training camp and whatnot, but they're not. I could be wrong. They're dialed in. Don't get me wrong, but it's not as close as it used to be back in the day, where like they were around the team all the time, all sports. I'm glad you brought up Hard Knocks because looking at just the preseason as a whole, and I mean more so nitpicking all 32 teams. So the Jets are going to be on Hard Knocks, and there was the report that came out from Adam Schefter, and I know Aaron Rodgers has been outspoken. It's not going to be as dialed in as previous years because the Jets find it unethical to show guys getting cut, which in a way you're going to just find out if the guy got cut or not. It's more so just how the story unfolded and how we sob and we're sad and hopefully he gets another opportunity, but you're going to get some intel on what the environment's like. I know we can go down the list of all the teams that have been on there, but suspended players, we know about that. Some guys from the Lions really stole the headlines in the offseason. Some other guys from other teams have also been in that gambling mix. Not as many suspensions for like domestic violence or just talking this year, that is, or steroid use, whatever it may be. But when we look at like the bigger picture, those types of public consumption things like a Hard Knocks, what are we looking at there, Kerner, potentially from anyone? What can you glean from that?
Yeah, like I'm not a big, bet on narratives and things like that. But certainly when it comes to Hard Knocks, I think they will get more public money. People will be interested in them and bet on them. So that might inflate the number and give us some value. But for me to like actually fade the Jets, it would have to be more practical. Like we'd have to get where Tim Boyle's going to play for 3 quarters. Like that's usually what triggers a bet for me, as opposed to just blindly fading the team that's a Hard Knocks. But it has shown, like I think it was Matthew Friedman put together last year. Like if you were to fade all the Hard Knock teams, you would have won like something over 60%. So there could be something there, just because it probably is inflating the lines a bit, and you're probably getting some value that way. So yeah, that is one thing that I've been paying attention to as well.
Okay. How about you, Simon?
Yeah, when it comes to Hard Knocks, I'm with Sean. It's just public perception, right? The public's going to bet heavier on a team because now they know them better, but I'm not too worried about the less access. I mean, last year the Lions had it. Did you see Jared Goff talk more than 3 times? No, because he was embarrassed.
They tried to hide Goff, and
because he did the Rams Hard Knocks, and he looked like an idiot. You didn't know the sun rise in the east, set in the west. It's like, I get it. There's some personalities I want to stay away from it. Aaron Rodgers is an egomaniac. This guy is going to love the cameras. He's one of those people. He's like, I don't love the cameras. We all know Aaron Rodgers loves cameras, right? He would literally go on Pat McAfee show every week to break his own news. So that's one of those where it's just like, he's that guy that's at the bar. He's like, I'm not going to drink too hard tonight. And then every night he's blacked out drunk. It's like, that's Aaron Rodgers when it comes to being on camera and being in media. So, Aaron, we get it. You want privacy and you just want to be focused on the Jets. That's not really how it works in New York. So I think it's perfect where this is a team that, arguably one of the most talented teams in the AFC. Now they have Rodgers, the old veteran. I really do think it's going to be a good Hard Knocks. For last year, Dan Campbell, the boys were fun, but they just weren't that much drama, that exciting, right? So I do think this year is going to be pretty good with this Jets team. But to me, betting wise, yeah, it's one of those I usually fade the Hard Knocks team. It's hard to take their over and take any type of futures on a team in the Hard Knocks where it's already going to be juiced, right, to a bad spot where I think they were 20-1, 22-1 before Rodgers was going to go there. Then it dropped to 16-1. That went to 14-1 at one point for the Jets. There's no value there. So I'm hoping anyone listening to this just will not touch this Jets team. Maybe if they start 1-3, right, that's when you come back on the other side because they have a brutal start to their season. So that's definitely my view on this Jets team. Is just wait. You're going to get better value come October on this team you are getting in August.
Outside of the narrative-driven content, you guys kind of weave this in too off the top. The quarterback information matters quite a bit, and that's more so just team-specific information that you're looking at. So that info is applicable for this as well. Okay, before we go, we did mention we would touch on the Hall of Fame game, August 3rd in Canton. The Jets will be in action. Speaking of the Jets, they are playing the Cleveland Browns. And this one's underway on Thursday, August 3rd, national TV, NBC, 8:00 start. Lines are up at FanDuel. Cleveland, 1.5 point favorite, -125 on the money line. Total, and we didn't dive into a lot of totals. But Kerner did bring up the total example that he mentioned back in 2019. These totals are really low in these games because we're not getting starters. We're getting really schmucks and guys selling or, waving greeters at Walmart down the road here. Total set at 33.5 points. An outlook for this game, Kerner, it is coming up. It's very soon.
Yeah. It's too soon to really have a hard take. I haven't placed any bets or anything. But the one thing that I do, so let me just backtrack. When it comes to this game, we're not going to see Aaron Rodgers play. We're not going to see Deshaun Watson play. It's going to be all scrubs. And on the Brown side, all three quarterbacks, Josh Dobbs, Dorian Thompson, Robinson, and Kellen Mond have rushing ability. And when it comes to these games, especially an ugly Hall of Fame game, that's huge because these defenses, they lay back, they play a very soft, vanilla-based defense. So if these guys have rushing upside, they could pick up chunk gains with their legs and kind of overcome the inefficient passing game that we'll see. So I think that's kind of sneaky on the Brown side and for the over. And on the Jet side, you have Zach Wilson. Who knows how much he's going to play, but, he has upside, so he's good for the over. Tim Boyle sucks, so when he's on the field, that's going to be bad. But Chris Streveler, same thing. He has rushing upside. So when it comes to preseason, these ugly games, guys that have rushing upside, I think the environment's a little bit higher scoring than people think. So this is a game, usually it's very low scoring, but I could see how this goes over 33.5. But again, need more information on this game, but it's going to be ugly for sure.
Remember way back when Cleveland had a Thursday night game and they were really digging deep into that running back depth chart. I think Demetric Felton is still on their depth chart. He was like a savior for some folks. I remember at a Thursday night game, him and somebody else, I can't remember, but he's a back for Cleveland that could see time. So Simon, after everything we just talked about, how would you, just using Jets, Browns as an example, it's not the best one because we know we're not going to get many reps or series from starters. How would you sink your teeth into potentially betting this game?
What a gift. One more time we get to fade Zach Wilson. So definitely going to be on the Browns. Talked to a good friend of mine who's a bookmaker in Vegas. He says right now it's all Jets money. So it's nice to know I'm fading the public by taking the Browns, and I'm also fading Zach Wilson in a sense of, I think Sean nailed it. I have a bunch of running quarterbacks on this Browns team. And that's kind of like, that's something I look for, but something I do like where it's like, okay, now I have to worry about this guy throwing stupid passes. Like it's either first read or they're going to pull it down and run the ball. Zach Wilson, he's going to try to force things in there, right? He's kind of like one of those guys where I think he sees it right on the wall. He needs to just kind of show out these next preseason games, keep a roster spot these upcoming 2 seasons. So to me, that's a guy that's going to be feeling the pressure where the Browns, I think they're going to be playing loose. It's an interesting number. If you look at this number, it's kind of like at a pick. It's like some books have it -1.5 for the Jets. It's a weird number where all the money's been coming on the Jets. It really hasn't moved that much. So to me, the bookmakers know the public like the Jets, that they're going to be the hard knock team. So I'm going to take the value on this Browns team and just hope these guys don't turn the ball over. That's the biggest worry with these quarterbacks is turnovers because they're killers in preseason. It's such a low scoring match. A turnover is such a killer. So I'll definitely be on the Browns in this Hall of Fame game.
I think totals have hit at a rate of 55% or better when it comes to the over on a total. Do you guys have anything to add on just totals and how to caution a new bettor or someone? Simon mapped it out nicely. If you're throwing a casual $5 or you're really not paying attention, but you're trying to pay more attention and you see a glaring low total. Like Simon, last year, there was a week in the NFL, December, it's the Arctic blast week where the totals are super low. Well, folks, keep in mind, we're in the month of August. It's warm pretty much everywhere. Would you caution folks on totals just to take on totals for preseason?
It depends on which quarterback, which unit's going to be on the field at a given time. So when it comes to totals, I rarely just bet the whole game. I'm usually taking, the first quarter or the first half, or again, waiting until the second half because I like the matchups on that back end. So I don't think of the total as a whole. I think of each quarter basically. So I think that's the best way to attack when you have good information is betting on like individual quarters or halves as opposed to the whole game. So that's usually how I attack it.
Okay, good stuff from Sean Kerner and Simon Hunter. You can find both of them in the Action Network app. As the month of August gets underway, they will have plenty of plays for NFL preseason. Find them in the app. Find them also at actionnetwork.com. Simon Hunter, co-host of the Favorites Pod. Sean Kerner, director of predictive analytics over at Action Network. I'm Brendan Glasheen. Thanks for tuning into the Action Network podcast. Hope this was useful. Enjoy and be responsible betting the NFL preseason. We are presented by FanDuel. You all have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you again real soon on the Action Network podcast.